son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
Holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, and we're back, joined once again by longtime friend Tyler Walker. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you.
For a triumphant return and more talking about underground bunkers.
Oh, yeah. Denver was the last one.
It's just what you wanted. In fact, I think one of maybe the first mentions of the Denver thing is Phil Schneider. I don't know
really?
which.
I haven't dived that deep. I mean, this was my first introduction.
So we'll get there, and that's why I suggested this one, because it so clearly ties into that. But all right, folks, today we're talking about a very strange scenario in Dulce, New Mexico, where supposedly there's an underground facility where there's all types of strange sci-fi behaviors going on. Now, Tyler, had you heard about this at all?
I had heard about. I did not know it was called Dulce before you brought it up. But I had heard about this underground thing in New Mexico that was given to the government by the aliens in a pact for the New World Order. But that's as far as I knew. That's just the surface.
Well, it gets really deep, and even I was watching some of these videos, many of which I've seen before a long time ago, but there were details that I had completely forgotten about. And there are a couple things that are very serious about the ability that we have to create these things, because that's the first question: is could we even create that? And
I mean, I think so, yes.
I think it is now proven with our boring technology, including some patents, that one of them they even mentioned in the fucking History Channel.
Yeah.
One, the UFO hunters, which that's, that I remember seeing that when I was in my 20s and being
I totally remember watching that episode.
Yeah.
Too.
Dude, it sent me down the rabbit hole of those boring machines. And we do have technology like that. That's how we bore those underground tunnels.
And it's a fact that there's all these other underground facilities that have already been created that are known to man, that the government's hey, we have these.
How do you think they did that?
Yeah.
I think it's I guess maybe at the time, because I think the first mention of the Dulce underground lore is in the 80s from the things called the Dulce Papers, which are these obscure origin, supposedly insider information of a former employee that
worked. Thomas Castillo.
There you go. Yeah,
he's the whistleblower firm that gave these papers to another reporter and was if I'm gonna check back every 2 months, and if I ever miss a meeting, let this out into the public, which I thought was pretty wild.
Yeah, and he disappeared. Him and his whole family apparently disappear.
Yeah, and friends, and
It's also strange too, because now back then, for these types of secrets, even if again the whole alien thing is just a cover for some secret programs that our intelligence agencies are running, people still die. People, if we're talking about an underground alien base, or we're talking about top secret spy plane, they're okay with killing people for that. It's documented time and time again. The government is willing to do whatever to protect their secrets. So that is a very interesting thing, and I guess that kind of ties into if we're going chronologically here, then we get the next big development from Dulce once these papers get released is Phil Schneider's lecture run in the early 90s when he goes public. Now, again, we've done an episode on Phil Schneider, so for people who have seen that, you might already be aware of some of this stuff. For people that haven't, I suggest go back and watching it. But basically, Phil Schneider was this guy who comes forward in the 90s with some obscure origin stories, but definitely some paperwork to at least prove some of what he was saying is true. and he says he was involved in.
He's a geologist that works for the government,
right? And
So-
I also think he said all of his work was like civilian. I don't think he was ever in the military or anything, was he?
Yeah, I don't think so. Just like that's his background is like that he's a government hired geologist.
Right.
So
And
he
that's-
does rock.
Yeah, and that's super common. Like Army Corps of Engineers, Bechtel, Raytheon, any of the big military industrial contractors, they don't have everybody. They don't have a single type of every single type of scientist on their roster. They hire civilians, and those civilians get vetted for security clearance, and that's a real thing that happens all over the place. So it's not even weird that someone would be doing contracting work like that for the government. But what he says he's involved in is excavating a space that they were going to use to turn into a bunker, but what they discovered when they were excavating it and doing his first like initial geologic survey of the place was that there was an alien civilization under there, and there was like a gun battle.
Yeah,
Now-
1979, right? We're talking.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So it's deliberately placed. I wonder if they can ever trace that back to story, like who's the first person to talk about it. And if it was before 1980, then it becomes even more interesting.
What I read about was like it's 1979 was the Great War when the Greys turned on the civilians, but it seemed like they had already like the way he tells it is that they were like boring in, and then there was a battle then, and I think that may have been before 79 because 79 seems like shit was already happening.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And then the truce was broken or something.
Yeah. Somebody was violated.
But like Native American, there's multiple like Native American accounts that live. There's the town's only 3,000 people big. Like 3,000.
Yeah.
There's not a stoplight in this city, dude. So a lot of Native Americans and locals remember bodies being taken away in 1979, and that's like the only thing that they can account. They're like, I didn't see anything else, but we saw a bunch of dead bodies being removed down through the city.
I also think it's interesting too because there's a lot of accounts. Those folks, it's a part of their reality. It's a part of their reality in a different way than it's a part of like average American's reality. And it's definitely a part of their lore, mythology, like dating back to the beginning of their culture. So, I don't think that's insignificant. And again, like, if you or I were to go over to Dulce right now and stay there for an hour, we probably wouldn't see shit.
Yeah.
You live there for 50, 60, your whole lifetime, years, you're probably going to see some strange shit out there.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about how they constantly see black helicopters with no logos on them, like annually. They're like in the middle of the night and stuff. It's like, that seems sus.
Well, this is not necessarily a hard connection, but did you watch that thing on Netflix called The Octopus Murders?
No.
Okay, so it's an interesting documentary about this journalist who was researching. Basically, in the 80s, there was a bunch of crooking going on internationally, and there's this nebulous, like Illuminati type organization called the Octopus. But what it basically revolves around is like business and political interests conspiring to perpetuate the state of war. And at that time, it was like the Iran-Contra affair. That was one of the arms of the tentacles of the octopus. And whatever. But anyways, in the story, this like sinister intelligence guy who's connected to intelligence goes to a native's reservation and basically says, hey, let us operate on this land because we don't have to abide by government law on this land, and we'll pay you kickback or whatever we do. And that's like the first time I'd ever really seen that mentioned in a major thing, especially on Netflix. But that's a pretty common thing for intelligence. People who want to do shit in the country, in America, but can't do it legally. They want to go do it on native land.
Yeah.
And,
reservation laws and stuff.
It's like in many cases it ends with the exploitation of those folks. Typical, but that's also not a unique thing. So I just found it interesting that thing on Netflix kind of refers to that. But this is kind of another situation. If intelligence services want to go do something illegal, or by America's standards illegal, they just go hide it somewhere on native land. Then no American anyone is going to come looking for them. It's a genius cover.
And like where Dulce is literally
middle of
nowhere. Yeah.
It's like sun scorched earth, and you're right. It's like 3,000 people.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Phil Schneider, he comes out. He says there's this battle. There's, anecdotal evidence, recollections of...
He's lost 3 fingers.
He has a massive scar on his chest. And he does... The most interesting thing to me is that he does have paperwork saying that he did work for some of the contractors that he worked for. And that's... You're not going to get a pay stub from them unless you work from them. Work for him. But anyways, so he comes out with this story. That's like a big hullabaloo. His press run in the 90s, it was right around the time William Cooper was also really big, but Behold the Pale Horse guy. And their story, like, for a while, it caught fire. And everyone was talking about Dulce, New Mexico. And then it kind of went away and then resurged again right around the time where I saw that. Maybe even from that UFO Hunter show. I just remember a lot of my friends not knowing about it, and then that episode of that show came out. And for those of you who don't know what the fuck we're talking about, do I even have it on here?
I'm saying that was the first clip that you shared too. I clicked it and I was like, fuck yeah, I remember this episode.
Yeah, no, dude, it's a good episode. And again, these damn ads, dude. This is what I watched. It told me all about Dulce underground base. This show was UFO hunters.
Oh yeah, there's the rat with the ear growing out of it.
Yeah, as an example of weird human experimentation. And honestly, this is like the perfect part too, because this is where the guy brings up the patents for the melting
nuclear tunneling device.
And that's some super real shit.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense. I mean, that seems like totally legitimate business,
100% legitimate business.
Seems reasonable.
Well, and like scientifically, like that's pretty sound. Rock can melt too. If you can melt rock, why would you dig it out if you could just melt it? And as it's melting, it's like making a finished concrete.
Pretty much glass.
Yeah,
tunnel.
no, seriously, it's that absolutely does exist. And even our boring machines, dude, we bore tunnels underground all the fucking time. Yeah. Elon Musk did it under Las Vegas.
And there's Teslas driving around there still, I think.
It's not this isn't crazy shit. We talked about it on the Dumbs episode, but I found this video from the 60s. It's the Army Corps of Engineers making a thermonuclear reactor bunker in Iceland under the snow in the 60s. And there's nothing out there. They pipe everything over there, including a nuclear generator, and they created it's a massive outpost.
That's wild.
In the middle of the fucking snow. It's just like we've been able to do this stuff for a long time. So it's not really unrealistic. Could we build those tunnels? But I guess even Phil Schneider's story, like when you watched his lectures, like what's your bullshit meter on the fucking alien shit? Like, because it's extreme. It's not just like, oh, we came into contact with beings. Some things.
He's like hella detailed. But I will say how motherfucking nonchalant he is about it.
Pretty chill about it.
Where he's like, pretty crazy, right? I know. And I'm like, you guys are talking about like vats of skin and like flesh and yellow liquids and stuff. And it's like, how are you so casual about this? But maybe he just seen so much shit and he's been on this, media run since the 80s, since the papers come out. So and that was in 95. I think that speech was, right?
Yeah. Well, he gives a speech. He doesn't want to. He tells people about it, but he doesn't want to go public with it until he had a UFO like leaflet him and a friend would put out. And his friend died under mysterious circumstances, but it was ruled a suicide. And after his friend died, he's like, well, I have to go public. I have to go public now. So that's when he starts going on the tour. It was also after his dad died, and apparently this is another kind of sideways tangent, but it's related. Apparently according to him, his dad was a Nazi U-boat officer who got taken over, an engineer who got taken over in Operation Paperclip, got a new name, new backstory, and went on to design like the next iterations of the American nuclear subs. And there's a really great documentary about Phil Schneider that you have to fucking pay to rent on Amazon. It's called The Underground, but in that they go into a little more detail about this guy named Franz Todt, T-O-D-T. He was a Nazi. He was in charge of all the major infrastructure stuff. And he specialized in bunkers. And the Nazis were like super prolific at building bunkers. And we took him in Operation Paperclip. So let's say at the end of the World War II, we didn't know how to build underground bunkers. But then we took the one guy in the world who was literally the best at it. Mm-hmm. And that's like, 1947, 48. And, some of the shit that if you see the bunkers that the Nazis built in the 40s, just like pourable concrete, it's like, it's ridiculous what they were able to accomplish. But, in the past 60, 70, 80 years, technology has advanced considerably. So I don't know. Go ahead.
Schneider came out with this information in 1980, right?
I think he comes out. They may have written it in their magazine, but he doesn't start doing this talks until the 90s. And that's when he really goes public. Okay, that's why whenever anyone references him, it's just those couple lectures he gave before he died. Yeah, under mysterious circumstances.
I mean, there's also an idea that the Anunnaki has been living there for 1 million years and gave it to our government to use as a piece, like as a pact.
Yeah.
Because supposedly they signed a pact in 1933 with the government when they were, that's a theory too.
Deep lore.
The deep lore. But, and they, try to work together and use it as an underground bunker. But a lot of people think that it was all just the Greys trying to start New World Order. So
the reptilian overlords.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that. It's filled with reptilians, right? Reptilians and the Greys is like that. It's like they're all working together.
They behind the scenes, aren't they all?
Symbiosis.
It gets a little strange. I've got a couple images pulled up here we can take a look at in a second of the supposed levels.
Oh yeah, my favorite, and I think you already know, is Nightmare Hall.
Oh, for sure. Come on, dude.
Also, doing some research on this, so many good metal band names.
Everywhere you turn here, definitely. 100%. Nightmare Hall has got to be primo. So these are supposedly, this thing goes miles underground. Mm-hmm. There's fucking 7 levels, and each of the levels become a little more sinister every time.
Yeah.
Every floor you go down. So here's a crudely hand-drawn picture by a 8th grader. Okay. And first floor is security comms, second floor is housing for humans, third floor is office and labs, 4 is all aspects of mental, telepathy, ESP, remote viewing.
Aura research, the human aura.
Aura research. 5, extraterrestrial housing. This is where the aliens stay. And then 6, all levels of genetic manipulation are going on. So
Greys working on Greys, humans working on Greys working on humans.
Anything goes on this floor.
Yeah.
And this is, again, notoriously where Nightmare Hall exists because of the sinister shit happening there. And then 7 is the cold storage vats. So there was at one point... cryo. I'm going to try to see if they have the picture of that. At one point, I think it was with the Dulce papers somebody released an image that was supposedly biologic bodies in vats.
Oh, yeah.
Then it turns out to be a still frame from like a really shitty John Travolta movie.
No, Arnold Schwarzenegger
movie.
The Sixth Day.
That's right, yeah. So that is hilarious. And of course, like once Phil Schneider got the story out the way that he did, everyone starts changing it and like telling it a little bit differently. And one thing I did like still about that, you know, History Channel's notoriously bunk. History Channel is notoriously shitty, especially when it comes to the topic of aliens. But this was really before Ancient Aliens had taken off. And that show, it's still a History Channel show, but it's all right. Like they do a fair amount of detailed work. And again, like I've watched a bunch of news, local news, short little segments from the people of Dulce, and they this is their reality. This is not something that is foreign or strange to them. It's so commonplace to them that they just accept it. So again, this is
just the underground train system.
Yeah, so this gets referred to a lot, and I've heard this talked about in so many different conspiracies. But there's this idea that the government has the ability to efficiently bore these crazy tunnels, build these underground, like in bedrock facility bunkers, and that they're all connected by an underground tram system
that can go Mach 2.
Like it's a maglev, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like a train; it's bullet train speeds underground, no traffic, and this web of this is mostly this is just a map that Phil Snyder drew that like connects military bases and other supposed facilities. But
yeah, I've seen one that's even bigger that has like
the whole
Atlanta and
here's the picture right here. That's the picture.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna see if I can try and find a underground bunker train map. See if we can get that. It's probably just gonna be the same shit. Oh, okay, yeah. This is more like it.
That looks like some fucking crazed drawing.
This is definitely some crazed drawing stuff.
I'm gonna get that as a back piece.
And like you can see this picture a little bit better. You can see the key, subterranean base, tube shuttle, underground nuclear test site, and again, like this. So we always have to take this in mind whenever we're talking about anything alien. It could just be something the government's doing that they don't want you to know about, like exotic testing. We were detonating nukes underwater and underground all over the Southwest for decades.
Yeah,
unchecked.
Bikini Atoll.
Bikini Atoll's like the most well known one. But if
supposedly there's a underwater facility there.
Absolutely. There was also, I just got put onto this other one. There's a massive underwater facility where they do submarine development and testing, and like if you look at it from the ground, you can kind of see some intense cables running underwater. But yeah, absolutely. Like we have the ability to do this shit. In fact, what we're talking about in terms of logistics is expensive and would require, companies that have the ability to rebuild infrastructure like Halliburton or Bechtel. But fortunately, we have companies like Halliburton and Bechtel. So they can do shit like this with all of our, well-taken tax money. But I digress. Anyways, the idea here is that there's literally a world of secret shit. And there's this author that I talk about a lot on this show. I know I've talked your ear off about him. He's the guy with the patches, the military patches. His name's Trevor Paglen.
Yeah.
And all he did in his career after he started documenting the dark world was like look at budgets and look at plane call signs and look at all this tangible data and kind of uncover where the actual black programs were occurring. And he discovered black prison sites. He discovered all sorts of shit that all he had to do was like follow planes or look up in the sky and follow the trajectory of a rocket, and then he was following the trajectory of a spy satellite.
Yeah.
This shit is real. Like billions of dollars are spent on national defense. A lot of that shit occurs in bunkers. This is like old hat now. Like you were saying before, we know about Cheyenne Mountain, we know about Raven Rock, we know about
what's the spot in West Virginia? Yeah, that's
the one in the hotel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those they can house and sustain life for hundreds and thousands of people. Like we have them all over the place, and all of the governments do. I'm not just shitting on ours for doing it, but
yeah,
it's a whole other world, and the people that live in that world, they're living in a different reality compared to what we have to live up here.
At the White Sulphur Springs Hotel, like she was like, yeah, for like years there was just so many TV repairman.
Yep.
And I was like, that's so funny.
Yep.
They're like, now you think about it, they never really had a logo or anything on their jumpsuit or like,
the TVs never got fixed.
Yeah, the TVs are always still broke.
We had all these TV repairmen, they never fix anything. So for me, I always have to I always want to accept to myself that all the alien shit could be a total cover. Yes, there's a bunker out there. It's not doing alien shit. They're developing fucking chemical weapons.
Yeah, it could be anything.
You know what I mean? And they don't want people coming around, so they're like, yeah, there's aliens down there. They'll eat your soul. And people are like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
But that's it. And even that is documented. Like that movie Mirage Men, Richard Doty, who's a guy who his job for the government was to plant disinformation for alien UFO lore right around the same time of Phil Schneider. But people were seeing the stealth bomber and the stealth fighter, and they didn't want people saying it was some new government technology. They wanted people to think it was UFOs so they would sound like crazies. You know what I mean? And nobody would think that we have this, super cutting edge technology. But in all, like digging through this, that kind of catches us up. That's like a general overview of Dulce. As you were digging into this, what are the things that were like some of the shit's like, okay, I can't believe that's too far out. It's so far beyond my experience. I can't. But what are the stuff that you come across that you were like, that's hard to ignore?
Just like I know like when it was starting to be built, like there's like the entire town were like, yeah, they built this new road behind the mesa for lumber, and it's like there's no trees.
Where's
around.
That going? Yeah.
There's no. Every truck just said like Smith Lumber.
Yeah, right.
And as soon as the lumber truck stopped, they destroyed the road. And there's like multiple like accounts that people have lived there for like, their whole life. Their families talked about it. We're like, yeah, there was just like that couple years where they were just loading lumber behind the mesa, and no one really knew where the road went, and it was like off limits because it was owned by the lumber company. And then like the road just got turned back into sand after so many years, and it's like, well, that's kind of hard to ignore. Like, what's going on there?
That you're reminding me, one of my coworkers is deep in this too, but he wants more tangible. So he was looking at archived pictures of Area 51, and he found like this area on the map where all of a sudden this road emerges, drives into a mountain, and then that road develops, and there's like pallets stacked outside the hole, and then same thing over the past couple years.
Really?
Pallets got less, trucks got less, road becomes less worn, but they were like building some underground shit there. You can just see it's on fucking.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can't. It's hard to ignore.
Well,
I mean,
and that makes sense. It's Area 51. They can't do that shit in the open. It has to. Whatever they're developing, it has to be done underground.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same facility, pretty much. Probably, it's like
just an extension.
Yeah, and it's not far off too. It's like New Mexico is a easy place to do it.
Well, and that's why a lot of us. It's not just military bases, because there's military bases all over, and there's military bases all over that people think have underground components, and they probably do. To be completely honest, they're the fucking launching pads for war, so I'm sure they have some underground bunkers. But New Mexico, that's why the Southwest, that's why there are so many military sites and test sites and missile ranges. There's nobody out there. Who's going to see shit?
another thing to kind of tie back to what you were just saying is like, I didn't realize until digging into this about how almost it's like 80% of UFO sightings are seen around where there are housed nuclear missiles or some kind of nuclear thing. So it's like, is it all, like you said back, is it all the government just being like, don't look at this, look at that?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, don't worry about this down here, but what's that?
I mean, definitely. It definitely
could be just be a big distraction. Yeah, I mean, the boring was another thing where I was like, yeah, this makes sense. This could happen, you know? Like that was like it was like a no-brainer. Like, can this be done? It's like, yeah. It has.
It has been done. I mean, bro, like just like with fucking Denver Airport, we can find news broadcasts from any news station going on a tour of Cheyenne Mountain facility.
Also,
that's in Terminator. It's in the movie Terminator, you know?
Also, you know, I've always been not a fan. I don't love cattle mutilation, but you know, I've always, you know, I've always been intrigued by, like, you know, finding cows with their organs removed and their blood removed, but like not a drop of blood on the ground, you know.
So this is actually pictures from that Dulce base. So that was the thing I was going to bring up. For me, it's this. This is the undeniable shit that, like,
and the fact that gas mask and glow sticks were found like right in range, and it's like everybody's like, oh, it was a wolf, and you're like, wolves wear gas masks? Like,
no, dude, it's honestly incredible, and this shit comes from police. Okay, so basically the backstory with the cattle mutilations is this is a thing that's kind of always been going on, but it was really stacking up around Dulce around the 70s, around that same time frame that you were talking about with the war. And like, this is farmers' livelihood, so they call the fucking police, and there's a couple cops, this guy in particular, who ends up writing this book, or his son, I think, maybe writes this book, but he goes out there and starts investigating it, and he has like all the fucking receipts. It's like, I went to all these things, I took pictures, laser cut precision, blood's drained. We found, you know, what looked like hybrid human cow fetal, fetal carcasses. These animals would have their organs removed. They'd have vital organs removed, and again, with no, you know, people want to say that they're animals, but animals leave teeth marks.
Yeah.
Animals don't do anything in surgical precision, you know,
and don't leave the rest of the good stuff.
Right. They're going to
also like
take as much as they need.
Have you seen all the photos of like how like they removed just the skin around their entire mouth?
Yeah, I'm trying to find some.
Those are pretty gnarly.
Yeah, for me, this is the shit this is clearly something.
Yeah.
This is clearly something.
Eyes removed.
An animal did not do that. And again, right, with no damage.
Yeah.
It's like they were just fucking componently removed. This is still the same picture. These are all the same picture. And this fucking security setting is stupid. I don't know if those are cattle mutilations, but you know, this was investigated by serious people and
multiple cops too. But the one guy is the one that came out and like wrote the book and stuff, I think, or like you said, his son. But like multiple officers were like, yeah, I don't really know, and they just had to write it off as. But like all like like you said, the gas mask and like glow sticks. Also, the thing that it was like, there's a bunch of the police reports are saying that it's like perfectly smooth, as if it had been like all tracks around the cow had been like covered up with like a broom. So it was like,
oh, weird, yeah,
almost like a crop circle around it, where it was just like not leaving any trace.
Yeah. That's pretty fucked. I've never heard that detail, but that's juicy. I like that.
Yeah. Well, also like, I mean, that might be like the removal of all the blood, but like, you know, because there's like all the blood's removed, but there's not a drop on the ground or something.
Right. Yeah, and like maybe technology that we are unaware of exists freely now, But back then in the 70s, no technology like that was known about. I don't even know if it exists now. I'm just saying back then, it for sure didn't exist back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, dude, those for me, and I think they talked to one of the guys in the History Channel thing, or maybe even this guy, but these guys are serious. They're not fucking kooky. They're like Midwest or Southwestern cops.
Yeah, they're not like UFO hunters.
They're not fucking kook jobs. They're like, they don't want this to be aliens, but even they are perplexed as to what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
That the cattle mutilations for me are like, that's what seals the deal. At a bare minimum, it just reinforces the idea that maybe it's not aliens, but maybe there's some sinister experiments that are going on out there, and those animals are being used as live incubators, or being tested on with chemical agents, and a black helicopter comes in at night to collect the sample data and then dips out.
Or maybe the reptilians like a little cow blood smoothie.
Maybe they want a
breakfast.
steak. Yeah, maybe they want a little stuff.
Maybe they want
eyeball and blood steak.
The liver's a good thing. It's got a lot of iron.
It's delicious.
Oh, another funny thing I thought about doing research about this is how all the people that have accounts like Castillo, other homie, like everybody that has an account of like was inside there, all say the grays stink like the worst garbage can you've ever smelled. And I thought that was a really fun. Like, they all kind of had the same thing. Like, think of the worst garbage smell ever. And I was like, damn, why do the grays stink so bad?
Yeah, well, I don't understand their biology at all. So
yeah.
All I can say is maybe we shouldn't judge. Maybe we don't smell that good.
I mean, they are like 7 feet tall. It's kind of hard to take a shower.
Yeah. Can you even blame them for that?
Yeah.
They just traveled across the universe. All right, cut them some slack.
Give them some slack.
Yeah, it's just this one's really fucked. I have never gotten over how obnoxious. Like, I mean, the first time I heard about this, I had heard a lot of strange and dark shit about alien lore, but Nightmare Hall, dude, 20-year-old me was like, sick. I love this. I love everything about this. But the older I get, the more I'm actually more okay with the idea that this is probably, if some shit does exist out there, it probably is just fucked up scientists doing fucked up shit.
Yeah.
On a native reservation where they are not subject to the same rules and regulations, and nobody even knows they're there to begin with, so they can just do whatever they want. And that just doesn't even seem crazy to me. I don't doubt they're doing some genetic experimentation. They very well could be, but the alien portion was always like, did they add that just so that people would immediately dismiss it? Or you know what I mean?
You're crazy. Why are you even talking about this?
Somebody at some point knew that there was some sadistic science experiments going on out there, and the cover for that is, oh yeah, there's aliens down there. No one's gonna believe that,
But why are homies getting murdered after they're coming out with alien stuff?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't have accidentally killed themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, shouldn't strangle himself with a catheter.
I was gonna say Phil Schneider's like if it's someone who was in dire straits and it's a single gunshot wound, that's deniability, right? You can't necessarily say, especially if their friends and family were like, yeah, he was in a dark place at this time, and
he had really checked himself into like mental hospitals multiple times.
Then it's like, okay, well, maybe we don't immediately jump to the idea that they were murdered. But Phil Schneider, that's a strange situation. His hands were tied behind his back. His neck was tied with his catheter.
His feet were underneath a bed. He was laying halfway in a wheelchair. But there was no signs of any other and they did an autopsy, and it was just like, yeah, he got strangled.
Well, so that's an interesting note. So in that documentary, The Underground, that, again, you have to rent on Amazon, but it's $3. I highly recommend it. If this was something that you were interested, that documentary is pretty good because it's just about Phil Schneider. But they interview his daughter, and his daughter relays the story of when they were trying to get his remains after he died. There was like this whole, they kept pushing it back. They wouldn't give him the toxicology reports, and they were trying to get his body back or the samples that they had so that they could do their own third-party testing to confirm whether they were being told the truth, and they lost the samples. It just stinks of typical conspiracy shit. Like, if either that happens all the time or that only happens in very specific scenarios where it actually is going to like prove a point. I don't know, but his death and his whole situation is weird, and his family did say that like all the documents that he had.
Yeah.
You know, like those all the documents saying he worked where he worked, pay stubs, all the documentation relating to his father and his father's history and connections. His father also famously, I'm sure you heard this in his lecture, relayed to him that he worked with an alien at the Pentagon named Valiant Thor.
See, I was not an in and out of the I was like listening to it at the gym, and I was like, this king guys.
This is heady. So there's that's a rough one. I actually, before we did that episode on Phil Schneider, I watched every one of his lectures, and there's like 4 or 5 that exist out there, and they're basically the same, but just they slightly variate.
Yeah, kind of like different.
But there's like the middle where he gets on the tangents about America and his patriotism, where you're just like, oh man, are we talking about America or are we talking about aliens? You know, you know what I'm saying, Philip Schneider. But I almost completely forgot where I was going with that.
You were talking about how his dad says he met an alien at the Pentagon.
Okay. So
named
Valiant Thor. Now, there's a metal band named Valiant Thor, and Valiant Thor is referenced heavily. That's where that comes from. It's from, and there's a documentary or maybe a book called Stranger at the Pentagon, and it's about Valiant Thor, and supposedly there are, you know, people who worked at the Pentagon who have come forward saying we worked with this individual who said they were from Mars like millions of years ago. And there's pictures of him too, and he just looks like a normal human being. But I guess what's weird is I've never seen something saying, no, that's a picture of this person. And
yeah, is it like where his like there's pictures of him in like 1950 and then like 2005 and he still looks the exact same.
That would be sick, but he didn't. This is actually all
he's
the
like
metal
ageless.
Band. It's only the metal band. He left. He was only here for a very short period of time. This is who that character is supposed to be. But these are real pictures, and this is who's referenced. This is supposedly Phil Schneider's dad.
Whoa.
And this was a picture that Phil Schneider had. This is like a situation room on a submarine or in a bunker, maybe. And
I love that he just looks like a dude.
Valiant Thor is in here. Who?
Valiant Thor. He's like,
oh yeah. No, well, I mean, he has to fucking blend in. And apparently he wasn't the only one. This is Valiant Thor, but then these two were also supposedly from Mars and, you know, working at the Pentagon or in connection with the Pentagon. And, you know, there's the more I've been recently enjoying the influx of alien developments. I've been reading a bunch of stuff by Diana Walsh Pasalka. I don't know if you've heard of her or her book, American Cosmic.
Mm-mm.
If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's a really good book. She's a great author. She's a religious studies professor, and basically she started looking into UFO lore becoming like the new world religion. And she has like a thesis and analysis as to why the same things we see at the canonization or beginning of a religion we're witnessing, but it's all about UFOs, which is a very interesting thing to analyze for just a moment. But in the process of doing that research, she gets connected with like some deeply entrenched people who are involved in legitimate, like known legitimate special access programs researching. She was actually the person who's really spearheading non-human intelligence, that whole thing. She was one of the first people to really start trying to like reframe it. It's not UFOs, it's UAPs. It's not aliens, it's non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
To just, kind of broaden the scope or perspective. The rebrand so that people...
Yeah, because UAP is the rebrand, right? It's like the guys, they're real, and now it's not all...
Yeah, if you say UFO, you're a dickhead. Yeah, you're a kooky dickhead if you say UFO. They're UAPs, they're unidentified. UAPs. But even if you just think about it, unidentified aerial phenomena, it's as vague as possible, right? Unidentified flying object, that's probably a plane. Until it's identified, it's an unidentified object, but it's flying and it's obeying the rules of flight. The shit that we're talking about doesn't obey those rules. It can do whatever the fuck it wants. It's just phenomena occurring in the sky. That whole rebrand, that's how they sell this shit to us. In the same way they're going to start selling, and I've seen a ton more shit about it, weather modification. I know you're sick of hearing about me talk about chemtrails and weather modification. But like now that's a serious... Tyler, I have to show you this because I just discovered this.
Please.
So I on this website, actually, you know what? We're gonna save this for XLB because they're gonna fucking censor the shit out of me on YouTube. So we're not gonna talk about. That's where we're gonna go back to for XLB for everyone that's gonna stick around.
Shout out to Patreon. We're gonna get some weird shit.
It's gonna be super fucking weird. I really I don't know what to make of it, and again, the more I know about, like, I spent a lot of time digging into this shit, obviously, but in particular, the actual logistics of the bunkers. The stuff is so real, and all you have to do is research the history of the space planes and military planes that we have. And there's a ton of research and information about this shit. It is a accepted thing that every military base has an underground component. It's an accepted thing that all the major important buildings in Washington, D.C. are connected by an underground train. We are. I can pull up pictures of that right now. It's an accepted thing that underneath the Pentagon, there's like Dulce, miles underground. It's just a massive underground facility housing the infrastructure of military and intelligence. It's not unrealistic, and it's funny to me that a lot of people... the White Sulphur Springs, the one in the hotel, that's the one I always show to people first.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, this is real.
It's like, it exists, and it has for a while.
Whether you like it or not, this is what they're doing. And
it makes sense, like, if you're a government. And,
absolutely.
Yeah. Especially because of nuclear fallout, like...
100%. How do you continue governing if your entire government's dead? It makes complete sense, and it doesn't scare me. It doesn't even piss me off, because in order for us, like I was saying about Area 51, if we want them to develop the most cutting edge shit that keeps this country safe from like an actual on the ground warfare, they're going to have to do that in a bunker. There's no space they can do it because there's spy satellites everywhere. Yeah. Google Maps will catch it. You know what I mean? So for me, there's more real to this than there is unreal. The alien thing almost becomes secondary when you think about the bunker, like the reality of the bunker shit.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's guaranteed that this base could possibly exist. I kind of think it does, and the whole otherworldly experimentation aspect of it could be a part, could not be a part, but the base probably still exists.
Right. Yeah. I especially when you look, if you really just start looking at the known shit out in the desert, it's a network. You know who has the most people in the desert? The military. Nobody's coming close. Even the people that live there, they don't have as many people. They've owned that area since they fucking fleshed it out for the Manhattan Project. That's where they developed that shit. And
Was that in northern New Mexico too, or where was that?
It wasn't Area 51 proper, but it was like right around that area. We can look this up. Where was there? Because they had some at Oak Ridge in Tennessee, Y12, the nuclear complex. That was a big component. And then where was the lab for developing the atomic bomb in the desert? What was it called? It was Los Alamos.
Okay.
So Los Alamos Labs, which is now another huge military contractor, that's where they started.
In the desert.
They developed that out in the desert, and I don't even know if they're going to say specifically where.
It's also like the area where they're testing all this shit too.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Location of Los Alamos National. Oh my gosh, it's the same thing from the Manhattan Project.
Really?
Los Alamos, New Mexico. Yeah, this is where they do this stuff. So,
New Mexico.
I don't know. To me, it's like it's not scary. It's not even unrealistic to think about for a second. Could they do this shit? And if we're talking about developing like the secret technologies of warfare, no expenses spared, and why not fucking bore shit out of a plateau? Like, why not? If we have the ability to do that, why would we not do that? We'll never have to worry about prying eyes. And again, the cattle mutilations, that's another tangible thing, super real. Yeah. And whether it's
happening
aliens,
right there,
whether it's aliens or not,
or government,
we know that humans have the ability to do that. We know for a fact that
we know it's not a coyote.
So I don't know. It's super interesting, but like, I guess my question for you would be: did this make you think about any other UFO lore stuff, or did this send you down into a dark, weird rabbit hole for a couple days, or like what are your
I know a lot more
detail about it now. What do you feel?
I definitely have more alien lore for sure. I mean, I've always known about the Greys, but now I know about the different sects of Greys, Dracos and stuff. It's pretty interesting. I never really, reptilian culture is considered like a native race.
To this planet, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. They're the natives. So that wasn't would never have said that before diving down this rabbit hole.
Well, and what's crazy about that is like if you go into the lore of just about every great culture that existed on the face of this planet,
there's reptilian
inner earth dwelling beings.
Yeah, that is
true. That's a very strange thing. That is absolutely real.
Cultures from other sides of the world have the exact same, like these weird lizard people live in caves and underground.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, the Sumerian Anunnaki is probably like the most recognizable one, but every single culture. I'm reading this killer book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages, and it's this like super heady esoteric. It's basically like the Bible for esotericism. It's just all the history and the cliff notes for all the things to get the points. But when you start analyzing a lot of the core mythology of a lot of the ancient cultures, there's much more in common than there isn't, and all of them for sure have the inner earth dwelling alien. So, I mean, but then again, that there's also the part of me like the reason that that's such a thing, that the reptilian alien is such a thing, is because that's how baked into our lore it is. Every culture on the planet Earth has had an inner earth dwelling reptilian alien story as a part of their mythology somewhere.
Yeah, and those communities that can't communicate,
Right.
They're not like
they're separated by thousands of years or miles,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Pretty interesting.
It's pretty crazy. You know, speaking of underground reptilians, what about the Brood? Has the Brood started? When does the Brood start?
Oh, it starts soon. Next month.
Dude,
it's not hitting Tennessee like it did back.
Bummer.
Yeah, it's not.
Just so you can say,
like the Brood is like, you know, because it's like two different cicadas, so like it kind of is overlapping more in like Illinois, like
gotcha,
some
more
in Tennessee,
Midwest. Yeah,
some in Tennessee, but like not like we were like, it was like an X last time, and Murfreesboro was like the center.
If that ain't some biblical shit right there, I don't know what was.
Insane. I can't even believe I lived through that,
dude. I remember. I think maybe like as it was happening, I just remember being on your porch, or maybe it was like the day after it had like really sunk in, and not only was your porch covered with cicadas, and we were all just amazed, but your entire backyard was black.
Oh yeah,
they were just all over the trees, and we were just on the porch like, what the fuck is happening?
I remember riding my bike down the sidewalk, and it was like, you're just like crunching them left like every 2 seconds.
Couldn't even help it, dude.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
The Brood is an eye sticker. I still find one of those in like a drawer every once in a while.
Yeah, no, me too. That's like I'll be going through a folder and one of those will slip out. And
I'll be like, I'll just tuck that back in.
It sure is. It sure is. Yeah, that's what a funny thing that is happening. We get our own little plague of locusts this year of all years, you know.
It just doesn't seem like it's been that long enough. I guess it has, but for like the Broods to like intersect, you know, like the 17-year and 13-year, whatever, however many years.
Yeah, because it was 2012, 13 years. No,
it wasn't 2012. It had to be like 2010.
Really? You think it's that early?
I mean, I lived at Trash Mountain.
Right. Yeah, you're. I guess you're right.
I got evicted from Trash Mountain in 2010. 2011, maybe.
Yeah, that is weird. I mean, the math doesn't add up on that. Maybe it's the eclipse.
Yeah,
let's just blame it on the eclipse.
Blame it on COVID. You know?
Mercury's in retrograde.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Well, dude, thank you for coming on here. This is going to conclude the first hour of the show. I have saved a really hilarious portion for the back half of this. But Tyler, as always, thank you for coming on here. Any final notes that you want to tell the people?
Always ask questions.
Love that. The inquisitive mind.
Always, never just agree.
Don't float the mainstream, man.
Yeah. Go against the grain. Live, laugh, and love.
Well, on that note, I don't know how we could end this show better. On that, We're out of here. Thank y'all.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The End. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.